My husband cheated and planned my accident while I was in a coma. But when I finally awoke, his perfect trap became his undoing. 3 months. That's how long I've been in this bed, according to the nurse's chatter. 3 months during which my loving husband apparently decided to rewrite our life together, starting with my will and ending with my death. As I lie here, unable to move but fully conscious, I realize that waking up might have saved my life. Now, I just have to stay asleep long enough to save myself. Before we dive into another story of a woman turning the tables, I want to thank this incredible community. If you live for moments when the underestimated become unstoppable, subscribe now. It's free, and you'll join thousands who understand that revenge is best served with style. Ready? Let's dive in. The first time I heard his plan, I nearly gave myself away. My heart rate spiked so dramatically that the monitor's steady rhythm faltered, drawing a nurse's attention. I forced myself to remain still, to keep my breathing even, as years of meditation practice became my lifeline. James's footsteps paused by my bedside, and I felt his hand, the same hand that used to trace loving patterns on my skin, rest heavily on my arm. "Everything okay in here?" His voice carried that perfect note of concern, the one that had fooled everyone, our friends, our family, and for 15 years, even me. The nurse, Hori, I think, based on her gentle voice, assured him it was just a minor fluctuation. Happens sometimes with coma patients. Their bodies are still processing stimuli, even if they're not conscious of it. If only she knew how right she was. Every word, every touch, every whispered conversation was being cataloged in my mind with crystal clarity. The irony of my condition isn't lost on me, a neurologist trapped in her own body, fully aware of every medical term they use to describe my state. Locked-in syndrome with apparent unconsciousness, they call it. I call it my unexpected advantage. The ventilator hisses rhythmically, matching my carefully controlled breathing. I've learned to time my natural breaths with its mechanical rhythm, maintaining the illusion of dependence. In reality, I could breathe on my own, but that would be the first sign of recovery, and I can't recover, not yet. "I miss you so much, sweetheart," James whispers when the nurse leaves. His fingers brush through my hair, and I fight the urge to flinch. "Everything's being taken care of, just like we always planned. You don't have to worry about anything." Except, I do have to worry, because what he's taking care of includes transferring our joint accounts, selling our vacation home in Vermont, and systematically dismantling every financial safety net I'd built over my career. The will he's altered, the one I'd carefully crafted to support my aging parents and fund a neurological research foundation, now apparently leaves everything to him. Through half-closed eyelids, I watch him check his phone, his face illuminated by the screen's green-blue glow. He's waiting for someone. These evening visits have become a pattern, and I've learned that patterns are weapons I can use. Right on schedule, the door whispers open. "Any change?" A woman's voice, honey-sweet with an edge of impatience. "Rebecca, his legal assistant." No, not just his legal assistant. I'd realized about 2 weeks ago. The way their fingers brush when they think no one's watching tells a different story. "Nothing. The doctors say there's no sign of improvement." James's voice carries practiced grief. "How's the paperwork coming along?" "Everything's in place. Papers rustle. Legal documents, I assume?" "Once it's filed next week, the changes to her will become official." "Are you sure about the timing for the rest?" "It has to be soon." His voice drops lower, forcing me to strain to hear. The longer she stays like this, the more questions people will ask. A tragic accident during recovery. A fall, maybe, or a complication. It's cleaner that way. My fingers itch to curl into fists, but I maintain my passive pose. Rage burns beneath my skin, but I channel it into mental notes, times, dates, witnesses. Every detail they let slip becomes ammunition. A monitor beeps in the distance, and their conversation pauses. I've learned the hospital's rhythms, shift changes, medication rounds, the predictable interruptions that make them careless. They think they're alone in this sterile room with an unconscious woman. They don't realize they're performing on a stage, and I'm their most attentive audience. "I should go," Rebecca murmurs. "Call me when you've worked out the details." James's answering hum of agreement is followed by the soft sound of a kiss. My stomach churns, but the nausea serves a purpose. Every betrayal strengthens my resolve. After they leave, I lie in the darkness, processing. My mind, once filled with research papers and patient cases, now catalogs their mistakes. They think they're being careful, but overconfidence makes them sloppy. They don't notice the night nurse who lingers just a little too long at my door, or the social worker who asks just a few too many questions about James's power of attorney. I've always been good at puzzles. As a neurologist, I had to be. The human brain is the ultimate mystery. Now I'm assembling a different kind of puzzle, piece by treacherous piece. My body may be still, but my mind is mapping out a labyrinth of evidence and allies. The night settles around me, and I continue my silent vigil. 3 months of practiced stillness has taught me patience. Soon they'll make their move, but when they do, they'll discover that playing dead isn't the same as being dead, and I plan to be very much alive when I finally show my hand. In the darkness of my hospital room, memories flood back like a tide I can't control. Each wave brings a new realization, a fresh perspective on what I once thought was a perfect marriage. The signs were there, scattered through 15 years like breadcrumbs I was too blind to follow. I remember the day James first suggested I update my will. It was over breakfast, casual as commenting on the weather. "You're handling more high-risk patients now," he'd said, buttering his toast with methodical precision. "We should make sure everything's in order." His concern seemed so genuine then. Now I wonder if he was already planning, testing the waters to see how easily I could be manipulated. 6 months before the accident, he'd started asking about my research foundation. It's a lot of money to set aside, he'd mentioned, his tone carefully neutral. Maybe we should diversify. I'd defended my choice. The foundation was my legacy, my way of ensuring our wealth would advance the field of neurology. He backed down so quickly, so smoothly. Classic James, always knowing when to retreat and regroup. The accident itself comes back in fragments, like a broken mirror reflecting different angles of the same terrible moment. I was driving home from the hospital late, after a complicated surgery. The roads were wet from recent rain. I remember reaching for my phone as it buzzed. A text from James saying he'd made dinner. Was that deliberate, getting me to check my phone on that dangerous curve? The crash itself is a kaleidoscope of sensations. The sudden loss of control, the sickening spin, the crushing impact. But it's the moments just before that now seem most significant. The way my brakes felt different, sluggish, the steering wheel's unexpected resistance. At the time, I blamed the weather. Now I'm not so sure. 3 weeks before the accident, James had insisted on having my car serviced at a new place. My colleague highly recommended them, he'd said. The same colleague who I now realize has been helping him navigate the legal complexities of changing my will while I'm incapacitated. There were other signs too. Subtle shifts I'd attributed to the natural evolution of a long marriage. The late nights at the office became more frequent. His phone grew increasingly private. He changed his passwords, installed better security on his laptop. I'd actually been proud of him for taking cybersecurity seriously. Another example of how love can blind even the most analytical mind. Our last vacation feels particularly bitter in retrospect. A week in Vermont at our lake house, the same house he's now quietly selling. He was distracted, constantly on his phone, but so attentive when he did focus on me. Now I recognize it as guilt, perhaps even rehearsal. Every loving gesture was a practice run for the devoted husband act he's currently performing at my bedside. The most damning memories are the newest ones, still fresh despite my coma. The week before the accident, he'd been insistent about reviewing our finances together. We should consolidate some accounts, he'd suggested. Streamline things. I'd agreed to think about it, too busy with an upcoming surgery to give it much thought. Had my delay forced his hand? Was the accident his way of ensuring compliance? I'd always teased him about his attention to detail, the way he planned everything meticulously. The perfect lawyer, I'd called him. The irony burns now. All those little moments of thoroughness were building toward this. The perfect crime, a loving husband, a tragic accident, a convenient coma, and now an unfortunate complication waiting in the wings. Rebecca's role in all this is perhaps the most painful revelation. I trusted her, welcomed her into our home for dinner parties, celebrated her law school graduation. How long had they been planning this together? I remember her unusual interest in my medical directives last year, the casual questions about my foundation structure. Every conversation takes on new meaning now, like reading a familiar book and suddenly understanding all the foreshadowing. The worst part is remembering how proud I was of our relationship. We were the couple others envied, the successful neurologist and the brilliant lawyer, still so in love after 15 years. At charity galas and hospital functions, people would comment on how James looked at me, the way he always kept a protective hand at the small of my back. Now I understand it wasn't protection he was offering, it was control. Even our last morning together seems different in hindsight. His goodbye kiss was longer than usual, his I love you more emphatic. Had he known what was coming? Was there a moment of hesitation, a flicker of doubt, before he sent me off to my accident? As I lie here in the darkness, cataloging these memories, I feel something shifting inside me. The grief and betrayal are still there, but they're crystallizing into something harder, something useful. Each remembered moment is another piece of evidence, another thread in the tapestry of deception I'm slowly unraveling. The night nurse comes in to check my vitals, her quiet efficiency a counterpoint to my churning thoughts. She adjusts my IV, notes something on my chart, and slips away. In the silence that follows, I continue my mental inventory of betrayals. Because understanding the past isn't just about processing trauma. It's about building a foundation for what comes next. James doesn't realize that while he's planning my end, these memories are planning his. Every recalled detail, every overlooked clue, is becoming part of my arsenal. The perfect marriage he dismantled will become the perfect trap. And when the time comes, these memories won't just be painful reflections. They'll be evidence. I spend my days piecing together the web of deception around me. Each overheard conversation, every whispered phone call, builds a clearer picture of James's scheme. Like watching a spider weave its web, I observe the intricate pattern of lies and manipulation taking shape. Today brings a new player into the game. Through my carefully maintained facade of unconsciousness, I listen as an unfamiliar voice joins James in my room. The transfer of assets is proceeding smoothly, the man says, his tone professionally detached. Though the research foundation is proving complicated. Thomas, that foundation is the key to everything, James responds, tension evident in his voice. Sarah put nearly 40% of our liquid assets into that venture. We need that money moved before... He pauses, and I can almost feel his eyes on me, checking for any sign of awareness. I maintain my practiced stillness, even as my mind races. Thomas. The name clicks into place. Thomas Weaver, a financial advisor James had mentioned in passing months ago. Another piece of the puzzle slots into position. How long has James been assembling this team of accomplices? The foundation's board of directors might ask questions, Thomas continues. Dr. Matthews was very specific about the foundation's structure and purpose. Dismantling it won't be as simple as liquidating other assets. A surge of satisfaction flows through me. Even in my supposed unconsciousness, my careful planning is causing them problems. I'd insisted on an independent board had every detail reviewed by multiple lawyers. Not James, notably. Another decision that probably pushed him toward this desperate plan. Handle the board, James snaps. That's what I'm paying you for. Once the new will is processed, we'll have legal authority to restructure everything. Rebecca's already prepared the documentation. My mind adds another strand to the web. She's not just James's mistress. She's the legal architect of my financial dismantling. The pieces are starting to form a pattern. James provides the authority. Rebecca handles the legal framework, and Thomas moves the money. A perfect triangle of betrayal. Their conversation shifts to specifics, account numbers, transfer dates, board member names. I memorize every detail, building my own invisible web of information. Each fact is a weapon, waiting to be deployed at the right moment. After Thomas leaves, James makes another call. Everything's proceeding according to plan, he says quietly. But we need to move faster. The doctors are talking about reducing her sedation, running new tests. No, we can't risk her waking up. Not when we're this close. My chest tightens at his words, but I force my breathing to remain steady. The monitors must stay consistent. I've learned to control my physiological responses, turning my medical knowledge into a survival tool. Later, a different kind of visitor arrives, Detective Morris from the accident investigation. Her presence is unexpected, and I feel James tense beside my bed. Just following up on a few details, Mr. Matthews, she says, her tone professionally neutral. Some inconsistencies have come up in the brake manufacturer report. Inconsistencies? James's voice is calm, but I catch the slight tremor beneath his composure. I thought the investigation was concluded months ago. New evidence sometimes leads to new questions, Morris responds. Would you mind walking me through your wife's schedule that day again? I listen intently as James recites the same story he's probably told dozens of times. But now, knowing what I know, I hear the careful construction of his narrative. The subtle emphasis on my long hours, my fatigue, the poor weather conditions. He's building a wall of plausible deniability, brick by careful brick. Detective Morris asks a few more questions, each one precise and pointed. She's good. Her casual tone masks the calculated nature of her inquiry. I add her to my mental list of potential allies, though I'll need to be certain of her motivations first. After she leaves, James makes another call. We need to accelerate the timeline, he says curtly. The police are asking questions again. No, I don't care about the financial penalties. Move everything now. And Rebecca, we need to finalize the accident plan tomorrow. The word tomorrow echoes in my mind like a gunshot. They're moving faster than I anticipated. My carefully constructed plan of gathering evidence, building a case, might need to be abandoned for something more immediate. As night falls and James finally leaves, I lie in the darkness, processing everything I've learned. The web around me is complex but not impenetrable. Every conspirator leaves traces, makes mistakes. James's growing paranoia, Thomas's concerns about the foundation, Rebecca's eagerness to rush things. These are all weaknesses I can exploit. The night nurse, Karen, my most likely ally, comes in for her usual checks. As she adjusts my pillows, I feel her slip something under my hand, a small gesture, but it confirms what I've suspected. She's aware, she's watching, and she's documenting everything. Tomorrow they plan to make their move, but they don't realize they're not the only ones who've been planning. In trying to weave a web to trap me, they've only succeeded in creating the perfect noose for themselves. Through the night, Karen the nurse becomes my lifeline. Her gentle hands check my vitals with practiced efficiency, but there's purpose in every movement. She's been watching, documenting, gathering evidence of her own. When she's certain we're alone, she whispers, Dr. Matthews, if you can hear me, blink once. It's a risk, but one I've calculated carefully. I let my eyelids flutter once, deliberately. Karen's sharp intake of breath is followed by immediate professional composure. I've been keeping records, she murmurs, pretending to adjust my fourth conversations, visitors. The detective gave me her card. She slides it beneath my pillow with practiced discretion. My mind races with this new development. Karen isn't just an ally, she's a witness, a credible one with detailed documentation. But timing is crucial. If I reveal my consciousness too soon, I lose my advantage. If I wait too long, I might not get another chance. Through the next morning's shift change, I practice minute movements, a finger twitch here, an eyelid flutter there. Subtle signs of improvement that the medical staff will note. It has to appear natural, gradual. As a neurologist, I know the typical progression of coma recovery. I need to mirror it perfectly. James arrives for his morning visit, Rebecca in tow. They don't bother to lower their voices anymore, confident in my unconsciousness. Their mistake. The papers are filed, Rebecca says. Everything's in place. We just need the final step. Tonight, James confirms. During the shift change, it'll look like a complication. These things happen with coma patients. My heart rate increases slightly, but I've learned to control the monitors. Every medical skill I've acquired over my career now serves a different purpose. Survival. Throughout the day, I catalog their preparations. James makes a show of consulting with my doctors, asking about risks and complications. He's building his alibi, laying the groundwork for the grieving husband blindsided by tragedy. Rebecca handles the paperwork, ensuring everything is legally pristine. They don't notice Karen's quiet observation or the way Dr. Chin, my attending physician, lingers longer than necessary during rounds. They're so focused on their plan that they miss the subtle resistance building around them. By afternoon, I've progressed to occasional hand movements, nothing dramatic, just enough to spark medical interest. Dr. Chin orders new tests, disrupting their timeline. I hear James's frustrated phone call in the hallway. We can't wait, he hisses. The longer we delay, the riskier it gets. Tonight, it has to be tonight. As evening approaches, I begin my own countdown. Years of surgical precision guide my timing. Each minute is calculated, each response measured. The night shift will change at 7 p.m. James will make his move shortly after, when the ward is at its most chaotic. At 6:45, Karen slips into my room for one last check. Everything's ready, she whispers. Detective Morris is standing by just like we planned. At 6:55, I hear James's footsteps in the hallway. He's early, anxiety making him sloppy. The door opens, and I sense him approach the bed. His hand reaches for my IV line. No. My eyes snap open, focusing directly on his face. Hello, James. The shock freezes him in place, hands still extended. In the doorway, Detective Morris steps into view, Karen and Dr. Chin beside her. Step away from the IV, Mr. Matthews. Morris orders. The next few moments are chaos. James tries to recover, to spin a story of devotion and relief at my recovery, but his performance finally fails him. As Rebecca bursts in, not realizing the room is full of witnesses. James, we need to... She stops dead, taking in the scene. Perfect timing, Morris says. Rebecca Walsh, you're also under arrest. We have some questions about recently filed legal documents. As they're led away, Karen helps me sit up. My muscles are weak from disuse, but my mind is sharp as ever. Doctor? Chin quickly checks my vitals, his professional mask slipping to show relief. We've been documenting everything, he tells me. Karen came to me weeks ago with her suspicions. When Detective Morris got involved, we knew we had to wait for them to make their move. How long? Karen asks. How long have you been conscious? Long enough, I reply, my voice hoarse from disuse. Long enough to hear every plan, every scheme. I look at Detective Morris, and long enough to build an airtight case. The detective nods. The evidence is substantial: the altered will, the financial transfers, the brake tampering, and now attempted murder, with multiple witnesses. They won't be able to talk their way out of this one. As the adrenaline fades, exhaustion seeps in, but there's satisfaction too. James thought he was the master manipulator, the puppet master pulling all the strings. He never realized he was performing on a stage of my design, every move watched and documented. You should rest, Dr. Chin says, adjusting my bed. The next few days will be busy with police statements and recovery assessments. I nod, finally allowing my body to relax. The hardest part, maintaining the deception, staying perfectly still while danger loomed, is over. Now comes the recovery, both physical and legal. Karen, I call as she turns to leave. Thank you, for believing, for watching. She smiles. Get some rest, Dr. Matthews. Real rest this time. As I drift off, I think about the irony. James planned to silence me forever, but in doing so, he gave me the perfect vantage point to witness his own downfall. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply staying alive long enough to tell the truth. The following days unfold like a carefully orchestrated dance, each step calculated and precise. From my hospital bed, now adjusted to a sitting position, I watch the threads of my revenge pull tighter around those who betrayed me. Detective Morris becomes a regular presence, her notepad filling with details I've stored during my silent vigil. The brake tampering was sophisticated, she informs me. Professional job. We've traced it to a mechanic with connections to your husband's firm. I nod, unsurprised. Check the payments through shell companies, I suggest. James always preferred to keep dangerous transactions at arm's length. My voice is stronger now, though speaking for extended periods still tires me. The investigation expands like ripples in a pond. Rebecca's law license is suspended pending investigation. Thomas Weaver, the financial advisor, cracks under pressure and turns state's evidence. One by one, the conspirators fall. But I'm not done yet. This isn't just about justice. It's about dismantling everything they tried to steal from me. My laptop sits on the adjustable hospital table, screen filled with financial records. Karen, now both nurse and friend, helps me sort through documents. They almost succeeded in transferring the foundation funds, she notes, scrolling through transaction logs. Almost, I agree. But James never understood why I structured it the way I did. The foundation wasn't just about research, it was about legacy. I pull up another document, this one showing the foundation's board members. Every transfer required multiple approvals. His forged documents couldn't bypass that. The recovery process is dual track: physical therapy for my weakened muscles, legal therapy for my compromised assets. Each morning brings new challenges, learning to walk again while simultaneously untangling complex financial maneuvers. Dr. Chin monitors my progress with professional pride. Your recovery is remarkable, he says during rounds, though I suspect you've been recovering longer than our charts indicate. I give him a knowing smile. A doctor makes the worst patient but the best actress, apparently. The media catches wind of the story. Headlines scream about betrayal and attempted murder, about the brilliant neurologist who outfoxed her would-be killer. I decline interviews, letting the legal system do its work. My silence becomes another weapon, driving James mad in his cell as he waits for trial, wondering what else I might know. Rebecca breaks first. Her lawyer approaches with a deal, full testimony in exchange for leniency. I listen to Detective Morris's summary of her confession with clinical detachment. She claims it started 3 years ago, Morris says. Office flirtation that evolved into an affair. Then James discovered your foundation was worth more than he realized, and murder became more profitable than divorce. I finish the pieces, all fit now. The timing, the gradual escalation from financial fraud to attempted murder. The foundation board meets in my hospital room, their faces grave as I explain everything. They're horrified by the attempt to dismantle our work, but impressed by the safeguards that prevented it. We've frozen all suspicious transactions, the board chairman assures me. The foundation's work will continue uninterrupted. I look at the research proposals spread across my bed, studies that could help future patients with conditions like mine. Schedule a press conference, I tell them. It's time to announce our new focus on consciousness research and trauma recovery. The irony isn't lost on anyone. My near-death experience will fund studies that might help others survive similar traumas. Late one night, Karen brings me a legal document. James's lawyer reached out, she says. They're offering a plea deal. I read through the terms, noting the desperation between the lines. James wants to avoid a public trial, wants to preserve some shred of his reputation. No deal, I say, handing it back. Some things need to come to light. My physical therapy progresses. Each step down the hospital corridor feels like victory. Each recovered movement a reminder that I survived. The other patients smile as I pass, not knowing they're watching a phoenix rise. Detective Morris visits again, this time with surveillance footage from the hospital parking garage. We found something interesting, she says, queuing up a video. The night they planned to finish things, look who was waiting in the stairwell. I watch the grainy footage of Thomas Weaver positioning himself near my floor's access door. Their backup plan, I realize. If James failed with the 4, Thomas was ready to make it look like an accident during a non-existent recovery walk. They thought of everything, Morris agrees. Almost everything, I correct her. They didn't think I'd be thinking too. The case builds, evidence mounting like a tide that will drown them all. Each day brings new revelations, new charges. The web they wove to trap me becomes their prison instead. As I sign the last of the legal documents reversing James's changes to my will, I feel a weight lift. The foundation is secure, the conspiracy exposed, justice in motion. What now? Karen asks, watching me close my laptop. I look out the hospital window at the city skyline I thought I'd never see again. Now we make sure this story ends exactly the way it should, with truth in the light and liars in the dark. Tomorrow I'll be discharged. Tomorrow I'll face the world as a survivor, not a victim. But tonight I savor the quiet victory of being alive, of having turned their perfect crime into my perfect revenge. The weeks following my discharge from the hospital become an exercise in careful observation. Just as I had watched from my hospital bed, I now watch from my restored position in life. Every detail, every reaction, every ripple my survival has caused in the world, James and his conspirators built. My home, once a shared space of supposed marital bliss, becomes my surveillance center. Hidden cameras installed under the guise of security upgrades during my recovery capture every visitor's reaction to my miraculous return. The same technology they planned to use to document my accident now serves my purpose. Rebecca's assistant, thinking I'm resting upstairs, visits to retrieve documents she claims were left behind. But the cameras catch her attempting to access James's home office, likely searching for incriminating evidence. I let Detective Morris know, adding another charge to the growing list. Your house is quite popular these days, Morris comments, reviewing the footage. We've identified 3 separate attempts to enter since your return. I nod, sipping tea in my study. Once James's domain, now my command center. They're scrambling, I explain. Each conspirator worried the others might have left evidence behind. The professional mask I wore in the hospital has become second nature, hiding my satisfaction at their desperation. The electronic paper trail proves even more revealing. Karen, who's become both friend and ally, helps me monitor the digital breadcrumbs, email accounts, bank statements, phone records. Each piece carefully documented and forwarded to the prosecution. They're turning on each other, Karen notes, scrolling through intercepted messages. Thomas is offering to testify against Rebecca. Rebecca's lawyer is approaching the DA about James. Let them fight, I respond, remembering how they once plotted together so confidently. Fear makes people careless. My return to the hospital, this time as a doctor, not a patient, creates its own opportunities for intelligence gathering. Colleagues who'd spoken freely around my unconscious form now watch their words, not realizing I'd already heard their true colors. Dr. Chin becomes an unexpected asset. The staff talks, he tells me during lunch. Some of the night shift remembered conversations, things they overheard during James's late visits. They're willing to testify. I maintain my public persona carefully, the recovering victim, the resilient survivor. But beneath that mask, I'm cataloging every whisper, every nervous glance, every subtle sign of involvement in the conspiracy. The prosecution builds their case methodically. I provide them with recordings from my hospital room. Karen had been brilliant in hiding small devices during her rounds. The lawyers are particularly interested in the night they planned the accident. Your attention to detail is remarkable, the lead prosecutor comments, reviewing my notes. You documented everything? I had excellent teachers, I reply dryly. Watching conspirators plot your murder gives you a new appreciation for thoroughness. My foundation work continues, now with an added focus on patient advocacy and medical fraud prevention. Each public appearance, each speech, sends a message to those who thought they could silence me. I'm not just alive, I'm thriving, and I'm making sure their kind of betrayal becomes harder to execute. The media attention serves its own purpose. Each interview, carefully controlled, adds pressure to the conspirators. I never name names, never point fingers directly. I don't have to. The public draws its own conclusions, and the court of public opinion proves just as damning as the legal system. Late one night, reviewing security footage, I catch something interesting. Thomas Weaver, out on bail, attempting to access my office at the hospital. The cameras show him leaving empty-handed, frustrated. The next day, his lawyer contacts the DA with an expanded offer to cooperate. They're realizing there's nowhere to hide. Detective Morris observes during one of our regular meetings. Every rock they try to crawl under has already been turned. I've learned to read people differently now. Every gesture, every word choice, every slight hesitation tells a story. The skills I developed during my coma have become second nature. I see the patterns in behavior, the tells that reveal hidden motives. Karen visits regularly, helping me maintain my vigilance while ensuring I don't lose myself in the process of surveillance. Remember, she says one evening, the goal isn't just to watch them fall, it's to make sure you rise. She's right, of course. This phase of silent observation serves multiple purposes. Yes, it gathers evidence, strengthens the case, and pressures the guilty. But it also helps me understand the full scope of their betrayal, process the reality of what they planned, and prepare for the next phase of my response. As I watch the sunset from my study window, I reflect on how different this vigilance is from my hospital vigil. Then, I was powerless except for my ability to listen and remember. Now, each piece of information I gather is another stone in the path to justice. The trial dates are set. Soon, this phase of watching and waiting will end. But the habits I've developed, the attention to detail, the careful documentation, these will serve me well in what comes next. Because sometimes the most powerful position isn't in the spotlight but in the shadows, watching justice take its course. The transition from observer to orchestrator comes naturally. After months of watching, gathering, and documenting, it's time to pull the strings. My carefully planned recovery becomes the cornerstone of my performance. In public, I play the role of the forgiving victim perfectly. Of course I'm devastated, I tell the court-appointed psychiatrist, letting just enough tremor enter my voice. But I believe in justice, not vengeance. The report she files portrays me exactly as I intended. Resilient but traumatized, strong but vulnerable, perfect for the prosecution's narrative. James watches me from across the courtroom during preliminary hearings, trying to decipher my game. He's always been good at reading people, but he taught me too well. Every gesture, every expression I show is calculated to keep him off balance. The foundation will continue its work, I announce at a press conference, my voice steady and compassionate, including a new initiative focusing on patients' rights and medical ethics. The reporters eat it up, the wounded healer turning trauma into triumph. Meanwhile, the foundation's lawyers quietly begin auditing every connection to James's firm. Rebecca's facade cracks first, just as I predicted. Her lawyer approaches with another deal, offering complete cooperation. I let them sweat for 3 days before responding. Timing is everything, I explain to Detective Morris as we review Rebecca's statement. Let her think she's controlling the narrative, then show her how much we already knew. The dominoes fall exactly as planned. Rebecca's testimony leads to Thomas, who reveals the offshore accounts, which implicate 3 other partners at James's firm. Each revelation is timed for maximum impact, each disclosure forcing the next conspirator to scramble for a deal. I orchestrate my hospital return with similar precision. My first surgery back is publicized, carefully selected, a young trauma victim, their recovery symbolic of my own. The press loves it. The hospital board breathes easier, and my position as a sympathetic figure grows stronger. You're playing them like a concert pianist, Karen observes during one of our strategy sessions. I learned from the best, I reply, thinking of James's years of manipulation. But unlike him, I'm using these skills to expose truth, not bury it. The evidence unfolds like a carefully conducted symphony. Each new revelation is timed to counter their defense strategies. When James's lawyer suggests temporary insanity, we release the recordings showing his methodical planning. When Rebecca claims coercion, we produce emails proving her willing participation. My puppet strings extend beyond the courtroom. The hospital board, eager to distance themselves from scandal, readily agrees to my proposed changes in patient advocacy policies. The foundation's new direction attracts positive attention, drawing focus away from the criminal proceedings and toward the future. Even my physical therapy becomes part of the performance. I ensure I'm seen working hard, pushing through pain, showing determined progress. The narrative builds itself. The survivor who refuses to be broken, channeling her experience into positive change. Your recovery is inspiring, a young resident tells me after a surgery. I smile, knowing that my visible strength makes James's betrayal seem even more heinous to potential jurors. The prosecution follows my suggested timeline perfectly, building their case methodically. Each piece of evidence is revealed at precisely the right moment, each witness testimony carefully scheduled for maximum impact. The DA's office has never had a victim so organized. Morris comments, reviewing our strategy. I'm not a victim, I correct her. I'm the author of this story. James's desperation becomes evident in his increasingly frantic legal maneuvers. He attempts to suppress evidence, claims spousal privilege, even tries to argue that my coma testimony is inadmissible. Each motion is denied, each defeat pushing him closer to the edge. I maintain my composure through it all, playing the role of dignified survivor. In board meetings, surgeries, and public appearances, I am the picture of professional focus. Only Karen and Detective Morris see the satisfaction behind my calm exterior. The media narrative spins exactly as I've orchestrated. Headlines shift from tragic betrayal to triumphant return, with every story reinforcing my carefully crafted image. James's attempts to paint me as vindictive fall flat against the backdrop of my measured public responses. The foundation's work must continue becomes my mantra in interviews. The past is a lesson, not a destination. Each statement drives home the contrast between his destructive greed and my constructive response. Behind the scenes, I continue pulling strings. Anonymous tips reach journalists at strategic moments. Key witnesses find their consciences at precisely the right times. The conspiracy unravels, thread by perfectly planned thread. "You've thought of everything," Karen says one evening, as we review the next phase of revelations. "I think of those long hours in the hospital bed, planning each move while they thought I was unconscious. They gave me plenty of time to prepare," I respond. Now they get to watch their own performance fall apart. The stage is set for the final act. Each player has their role, each piece of evidence, its moment. James and his conspirators thought they were the puppet masters, but they never saw the true strings. As I prepare for the trial's main days, I know the performance of a lifetime is about to begin. What they planned as a tragedy, I've rewritten as justice. And this time, I'm the one controlling every scene. The first sign of their complete unraveling comes unexpectedly. Thomas Weaver is found in his car outside the city, a half-written confession on his laptop. Not dead, just drunk and desperate, the weight of his actions finally breaking him. It's a reminder that even the most carefully constructed conspiracies can collapse under their own guilt. "He's ready to tell everything," Detective Morris informs me, reviewing his statement. "The offshore accounts, the brake tampering arrangements, the backup plans, all of it." James's reaction to Thomas's breakdown is telling. His carefully maintained composure cracks during a pre-trial hearing. I watch from my seat as he snaps at his own lawyer, his mask of professional dignity slipping to reveal the desperate man beneath. Rebecca, ever the pragmatist, moves to distance herself further. She's offering documentation we didn't even know existed, her lawyer tells the prosecution. Personal recordings, emails, detailed timelines of every meeting. Her survival instinct is strong, but her timing is off. We already have most of what she's offering. The pressure begins to show in unexpected ways. James's law firm, already distancing itself from the scandal, faces its own internal investigation. Partners who once supported him suddenly discover urgent needs to cooperate with authorities. 3 more associates have come forward, Morris updates me. "Apparently, your attempted murder wasn't the first time James suggested accidents as solutions to problems." I absorbed this information with clinical detachment, though inside a chill runs through me. How many other plots had he considered before deciding to move against me? The foundation board meets in emergency session as new financial irregularities come to light. "We found evidence of earlier attempts to access the funds," the chairman reports, "going back at least 2 years before your accident." This revelation slots into place like a missing puzzle piece, the long game he'd been playing, the patient manipulation. It had started far earlier than any of us realized. Each new discovery makes the web of deceit more complex, but also more fragile. James makes his first serious mistake during a deposition. Frustrated by questions about the foundation's finances, he lets slip a detail about transfers that only someone with illegal access to the accounts would know. His lawyer's face goes pale, but the words can't be taken back. He's cracking. "They're all cracking," Karen observes as we review the deposition transcript. The media begins to pick up on the expanding scope of the conspiracy. What started as a story of domestic betrayal evolves into an exposé of corporate corruption and systematic fraud. Each new headline adds pressure to the already strained relationships between the conspirators. Rebecca, sensing the shifting winds, makes another play for leniency. This time she offers something unexpected, evidence of other crimes unrelated to my attempted murder. Insurance, fraud, witness tampering, judicial bribes. Morris lists them off. She's burning every bridge she can find. I watch it all from my carefully maintained position of professional dignity. Each day, I perform surgeries, attend board meetings, and continue the foundation's work. My apparent focus on healing and moving forward stands in stark contrast to their increasingly chaotic attempts at self-preservation. The most dramatic unraveling comes during a routine evidence review. One of James's junior associates, tasked with preparing documents for discovery, finds something his superiors missed. A hidden email account full of incriminating correspondence. "They were sloppy," Morris says, showing me the emails. "Got too confident, too comfortable with their plans." The pressure begins to affect their health. Thomas develops an ulcer. Rebecca starts missing court appearances due to anxiety attacks. James, always proud of his polished appearance, looks increasingly haggard. Their attempts at damage control become increasingly desperate. James tries to claim temporary insanity. Rebecca suggests she was coerced. Thomas babbles about corporate culture and pressure from above. None of their stories quite match, and each new version makes them appear more guilty. "They're doing our job for us," the prosecutor comments during a case review. "At this rate, they'll convict themselves." I maintain my role as the composed survivor, but inside I feel a grim satisfaction. The same pressure they had tried to put on me, the slow, methodical destruction of a life, is now working against them. The final thread comes loose during a routine financial audit. A junior accountant, someone they'd never considered important enough to notice, finds the transaction records they thought they destroyed. The evidence is damning, detailed, and completely admissible. "It's over," Morris tells me, holding the files. "With this, we can prove intent, conspiracy, and premeditation. There's no way out for any of them." I look out my office window at the hospital campus below. Somewhere down there, patients are fighting for their lives, just as I did. But my battle wasn't just for survival, it was for justice. They thought they had planned for everything, I say quietly. But they never planned for the truth. The threads of their conspiracy, once so tightly woven, now hang loose and exposed. All that remains is to watch as justice pulls the final strings, unraveling their world completely. Tomorrow, the trial begins in earnest. Their facades have cracked, their Their alliances have shattered, and their carefully constructed plot has collapsed. Now they'll face the consequences of their actions, not as confident conspirators, but as desperate, divided individuals. The truth, as they're learning, has a way of surviving even the most elaborate attempts to bury it. The courtroom becomes my final stage, where every piece I've carefully positioned moves toward its inevitable conclusion. James sits at the defense table, his expensive suit no longer fitting quite right, his confidence visibly shaken. Rebecca occupies a separate table with her lawyer, their plea deal finalized but her testimony still to come. All rise, the bailiff calls, and I feel the weight of all those months of planning settle into place. From my Coma surveillance to this moment, every move has led here. The prosecution's opening statement is masterful, weaving together the threads of evidence I've helped gather. This isn't just about attempted murder, the DA begins. This is about a calculated conspiracy that began years ago, a systematic attempt to steal not just money, but a life. I watch the jury as the evidence unfolds. The hospital recordings play first, James and Rebecca planning my accident while they thought I was unconscious. The jurors' faces reflect their horror at the casual way my death was discussed. "We've got them," Detective Morris whispers during a recess. The jury's reaction to the recordings was even better than we hoped. But I know better than to celebrate too early. James has always been skilled at recovering from setbacks. Sure enough, his defense team attempts to paint the recordings as misleading, taken out of context. Then Rebecca takes the stand. Her testimony is devastating. She details every meeting, every plan, every backup strategy they devised. The jury learns about the brake tampering, the altered will, the elaborate schemes to access the foundation's funds. And Mr. Matthews specifically said? The prosecutor leads. He said that a coma wasn't enough, Rebecca replies, not meeting James's glare. That as long as his wife was alive, there was a risk she might wake up and discover everything. The financial evidence comes next, presented by forensic accountants who trace every attempted transfer, every hidden account. The foundation board members testify about the subtle attempts to gain control of the funds, the careful groundwork laid years in advance. Thomas Weaver's testimony follows, his nervous demeanor lending credibility to his account of setting up offshore accounts and arranging the mechanical sabotage of my car. It was supposed to look like brake failure, he explains, voice shaking. A tragic accident. Karen takes the stand next, her professional composure perfect as she details her observations during my hospital stay. I noticed inconsistencies, she testifies. The way Mr. Matthews behaved when he thought no one was watching, the late-night conversations, the changing of his wife's medical directives. Dr. Chin's testimony adds medical weight to the case. He explains the unlikelihood of my injuries being purely accidental, the subtle signs that suggested foul play. His clinical analysis makes the premeditation even more apparent. The defense team's cross-examinations grow increasingly desperate. They try to suggest alternate theories, question motivations, cast doubt on timestamps, but each attempt is met with more evidence, more corroboration, more proof. During a lunch recess, Morris shows me new information they've uncovered. "We found earlier attempts," she says quietly. 3 years ago, he tried to arrange a similar accident for a business partner. It never went through. But the pattern is clear. This new evidence goes to the prosecutor immediately. James's defense strategy of claiming this was an isolated incident driven by financial stress crumbles in the face of this pattern of behavior. The technical evidence proves insurmountable. Digital forensics experts trace emails, phone records, and financial transactions. The jury sees a clear timeline of conspiracy, each piece fitting perfectly into place. The net is tightening. You can see it in their faces, Karen observes during another recess. He's right. The confident smirks are gone, replaced by tight expressions and nervous glances. Even James's legendary composure shows cracks, his hands trembling slightly as he takes notes. The prosecution saves their strongest evidence for last, my own testimony. As I take the stand, I feel the weight of months of planning, watching, and waiting culminate in this moment. Dr. Matthews. The prosecutor begins. Please tell the court about the first time you became aware of your husband's plans. My testimony is clear, detailed, and devastating. I describe the gradual awareness during my coma, the careful gathering of evidence, the systematic way James and his conspirators planned my death. The jury hangs on every word, their horror visible as the full scope of the betrayal becomes clear. James's lawyer barely attempts cross-examination. What can he ask that won't make things worse? Every question would only give me another opportunity to reveal more damning details. As the evidence phase draws to a close, I watch James finally accept the inevitability of his situation. The realization crosses his face like a shadow, every escape route blocked, every defense crumbling, every ally turned witness. The prosecution rests, the DA announces, and I feel the pieces lock into place. Tomorrow will bring closing arguments, but the outcome is already clear. The careful positioning of evidence, witnesses, and testimony has created an inescapable trap. Like a chess game reaching its final moves, every piece is exactly where it needs to be. Checkmate isn't just approaching, it's inevitable. The jury takes only 4 hours to reach their verdict. When we return to the courtroom, the tension is palpable. James sits rigidly at the defense table, his expensive suit now hanging loose on his frame, weeks of stress having taken their toll. In the matter of the state versus James Matthews, on the count of attempted first-degree murder, how do you find? Guilty. The word rings through the courtroom like a bell, clear and final. I watch James's shoulders slump as each additional verdict follows. Conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement, attempted insurance fraud. Guilty on all counts. Rebecca, having already pleaded guilty in exchange for her testimony, receives a reduced sentence of 15 years. Thomas Weaver gets 12. But James faces life without parole. Before sentencing, I exercise my right to make a victim impact statement. Standing at the podium, I look directly at the man who was my husband, the man who planned my death with the same precision he once used to plan our vacations. I trusted you, I begin, my voice steady. For 15 years, I trusted you with my life, my love, and my future. You repaid that trust by trying to steal not just my fortune, but my very existence. But you taught me something valuable, James. You taught me that survival is the coldest form of revenge. His eyes finally meet mine, and for the first time, I see real fear in them. Not fear of prison, but fear of me, of the woman who outmaneuvered him at his own game. The judge's sentence is unequivocal: life imprisonment, no possibility of parole for 50 years. This court, she declares, has rarely seen such a calculated, heartless attempt to destroy a life for financial gain. As they lead James away, he tries one last time to catch my eye, perhaps hoping to see some flicker of the woman who once loved him. Instead, he sees what he created. A survivor who learned to be as calculating as he was, but in service of justice rather than greed. The aftermath brings its own form of satisfaction. James's law firm dissolves under the weight of the scandal, their clients fleeing as more evidence of corruption emerges. The offshore accounts are traced, their contents frozen and eventually returned to their rightful owners. My foundation not only survives but thrives. We establish a new program specifically focused on helping victims of medical fraud and attempted murder recover and rebuild their lives. The irony is not lost on anyone. James's attempt to destroy my legacy only makes it stronger. Detective Morris visits me at the hospital a week after sentencing. The DA's office is calling it the perfect case, she says. They're already using it as a teaching example. Perfect, because we had perfect evidence, I reply, thinking of those long hours of silent surveillance, of Karen's meticulous documentation, of all the threads we gathered and wove into an unbreakable net. The media circus eventually dies down, but not before my story inspires a wave of reform in medical proxy laws and hospital security protocols. Hospitals across the country adopt new guidelines for monitoring long-term coma patients, guidelines I helped develop based on my experience. Karen is promoted to head of nursing, her role in exposing the conspiracy earning her both respect and recognition. Dr. Chin becomes chief of neurology, our shared experience creating a bond of trust that strengthens the entire department. My first public speech after the trial is at a medical ethics conference. Medicine is built on trust, I tell the audience. When that trust is betrayed, we must ensure that justice has the tools to respond. Every patient deserves not just care, but protection. The Foundation's new direction brings unexpected healing. Each victim we help, each life we rebuild, helps rebuild my own faith in humanity. The darkness James tried to pull me into becomes a source of light for others. Late one night, as I'm finishing hospital rounds, I find myself in the room where I once lay comatose, listening to my own murder being planned. A young patient lies there now, genuinely unconscious, their family maintaining hopeful vigil. They caught my attacker today. The patient's mother tells me, not knowing my story, the doctor said she might still hear us, even in the coma, so we keep talking to her, letting her know she's safe now. I check the patient's vitals, remembering my own time in that bed. Keep talking to her, I advise. Sometimes consciousness finds its way back through the voices of those who care. Walking out of the hospital that night, I feel the last cold edges of revenge melt away, replaced by something warmer. Not forgiveness exactly, but purpose. James and his conspirators will spend their lives in cells of their own making while I continue to build something larger than myself. The security guard nods as I pass. Good night, Dr. Matthews. Good night, I reply, stepping into the cool evening air. Above me, stars pierce the darkness, reminding me that light always finds a way through. James tried to write my ending, but instead he only wrote his own. My story continues, stronger for having survived its darkest chapter. Justice, served cold, turns out to be the best medicine of all. 1 year after the trial, I find myself standing in front of my bathroom mirror, studying my reflection. The woman looking back bears little resemblance to the one who lay comatose in that hospital bed. My eyes are harder now, carrying the weight of experience, but also clearer, seeing the world as it is, not as I once wished it to be. The morning paper sits on my kitchen counter, its headlines announcing James's failed appeal. His lawyers tried to argue procedural errors, but the evidence was too overwhelming, the case too perfect. The appeals court took less time to uphold his conviction than the original jury took to deliver it. Karen joins me for coffee, a weekly ritual we've maintained since the trial. Have you heard? She asks. Rebecca's writing a book from prison. I nod, unsurprised. Confessions of a Conspirator, I muse. How predictable. Does it bother you? Karen watches me carefully, still protective after all this time. I consider the question, stirring my coffee thoughtfully. No, I finally answer. Let her tell her version. The truth already won. The Foundation's work keeps me grounded. Today, we're reviewing applications for our victim support program. Each story of betrayal and survival reminds me that my experience, while extreme, isn't unique. People survive the unthinkable every day. Detective Morris, now Captain Morris, still checks in regularly. Thomas Weaver's requesting a transfer, she informs me during her latest visit. Says he can't sleep in the current facility. Keeps dreaming about what they plan to do to you. Good, I reply, but the satisfaction feels hollow. Revenge, even justified, leaves its mark on everyone involved. My new house, a modern structure of glass and steel, nothing like the traditional home I shared with James, offers panoramic views of the city. At night, I often stand at the windows, watching the lights below, remembering how close I came to never seeing them again. The hardest part, surprisingly, isn't the memories of betrayal. It's learning to trust again. Each new relationship, professional or personal, comes with a shadow of doubt. I find myself analyzing motives, watching for signs, maintaining a vigilance that's both protective and exhausting. Dr. Chin notices this during a complicated surgery. "You don't have to verify everything 3 times, he says gently. "Some people can actually be trusted." He's right, of course. The price of revenge isn't just measured in court victories and prison sentences. It's measured in midnight doubts and careful distances, in the way I now approach every relationship with a surgeon's precision. The Foundation's annual gala brings this home. As I deliver my speech about resilience and recovery, I scan the crowd automatically, noting exits, watching reactions, maintaining the awareness that became second nature during my hospital vigil. "You're safe now," Karen reminds me afterward. "You won. But winning has its own cost. The skills that saved my life, observation, calculation, perfect timing, have become reflexive. The woman who once trusted freely now verifies everything. The doctor who focused solely on healing now understands the necessity of defense. My parents, finally recovered from their own trauma of almost losing their daughter, worry about my solitude. You can't let what he did define your future," my mother says during Sunday dinner. "I'm not," I assure her. "I'm letting it inform my future. There's a difference. The difference shows in my work. My patients benefit from my heightened awareness, my understanding of vulnerability. The Foundation's programs are stronger for my firsthand knowledge of betrayal and recovery. Even my medical research is more nuanced, incorporating insights into consciousness and trauma that only personal experience could provide." Late one night, I receive an unexpected letter. It's from James, passed through his lawyers and screened by security. For a long moment, I stare at the envelope, feeling the weight of all that's happened. Finally, I open it. His handwriting is different, shaky, less controlled. He writes of regret, of realizing too late what he destroyed, of hoping somehow for forgiveness. I place the letter in my office safe, alongside the evidence files I still keep. Not because I need them anymore, but as a reminder that truth, once revealed, can never be buried again. The next morning, I perform a delicate surgery, saving a life that could have been lost. In the recovery room, watching my patient wake up, I realize something important. The price of revenge might be high, but the value of survival is immeasurable. My story becomes part of medical school ethics courses, a case study in betrayal and justice. When I'm asked to speak to students, I tell them not just about the conspiracy and its unraveling, but about the cost of vigilance and the importance of balanced trust. The hardest lesson, I tell them, isn't learning who to trust. It's learning to trust at all after betrayal. But without that risk, we lose something essential in medicine, the human connection that makes healing possible. As I drive home under a darkening sky, I reflect on the journey from victim to survivor to victor. The price of revenge was high, paid in trust, in innocence, in the simple joy of unguarded relationships. But it bought something valuable: wisdom, strength, and the power to help others survive their own betrayals. The woman in the hospital bed died in a way, but who emerged as someone stronger, wiser, and perhaps better equipped to face a world where trust must be balanced with awareness, and healing must sometimes be preceded by justice. The price was high, but survival, that's priceless.